All right, we are live on YouTube.
Very well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Orleans. Notice was properly published and posted at Town Hall. And I am Michael P. Myrick, who has been designated as the chair for the purpose of this meeting. And I also have with me the following members of the zoning board: Bennett Hope, Matthew Cole, George Wall, Bruce Todd, Emily Van Giesen, and Gerald Mulligan. We have a quorum. Also present is the board secretary, Stacy Faber, and the building commissioner of the town, Tom Evers. We have two items on the agenda. The first was added at the behest of town council. This arises out of case number 2123, a decision we reached in on November 6, 2019. And there were the applicant was dissatisfied with our opinion and brought an action in the Barnstable Superior Court. After some proceedings, the court entered an order dated June 23rd, 2020, which requested, actually, remanded the 2123 to the zoning board with the following instructions: that we should not take public comment or accept additional information or material, and the board shall, in the form of an amended decision, issue explicit additional findings setting forth the basis for that November 6, 2019 decision. And then the amended decision would be filed with the town clerk. Now, the complaint, if I remember correctly, alleged that the decision did not set forth the reasoning for our decision. I am informed that if our amended decision states that the applicant's appeal, Mr. Olivier's appeal of the building permit issued by the building commissioner, was for the sole reason that his appeal was for the sole reason of projecting what the use was going to be made of the single family home authorized by the building permit. And if our decision was that Mr. Olivier's appeal was premature, since all we could decide is whether Mr. Evers erred in the issuance of the building permit, then later on, Mr. Olivier could go and then complain that the building commissioner should enforce the proper use of the property. I don't remember, let me just check. The members of the zoning board who were present were Ms. Van Giesen, Mr. Mulligan, Mr. Todd, and myself. Mr. Cole was excused from the consideration. And that's exactly what my memory is, that we decided that the building commissioner, the appeal from the building commissioner was wrong, and we dismissed the application because Mr. Olivier was claiming that the use authorized by the building permit was violated zoning. And our thinking was Well, you know, the building permit was correct. The ultimate use of the property might be something different. So this, in other words, the complaint was that the decision which was filed was insufficient. And we can correct it now with an amended decision and therefore, and file it, and then the court would dismiss the Superior Court case. I think that's about as clear as I can be. Mr. Todd, did you understand what I was saying? You're muted.
Are you asking me specifically?
Yes.
I have to say that it would be helpful to me if I heard the facts of the underlying case or I had the decision to reference.
It was case number 2123, and it was an appeal from the decision of the building inspector to issue a building permit on 21 Great Oak Road. A neighbor complained that that should not to have been issued because the owner was going to violate by its use the single family the single family residence, and what we were saying is, well, we don't know what the building permit can proceed. The owner can build, and if there's a complaint later on that the use exceeds the permitted use under the bylaw, then a neighbor or anyone could come in and ask the building inspector to enforce the zoning. That's what I was trying to say.
I recall those facts.
And that is, I think that was the underlying the rationale for our decision, except it wasn't stated in the decision.
I agree with that. I believe I was at that meeting because I distinctly remember that we agreed that what the building inspector said was in his decision was correct because there was no information or specificity that said this particular use was a violation of the requirements. And we basically also said that once they did that, if they started to use it as a destination resort, then a violation would be written and they would be cited. So yes, I agree. I think that's my recollection too. Absolutely.
And your Judge, your exposition of it was far clearer than the one I just gave. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a vote to issue an amended decision, which would be identical to the original decision, but adding, and this is a motion, the following language. After consideration of all the evidence, the board found that the applicant's appeal of the building permit focused solely on the applicant's contentions regarding the use intended to be made of the single-family home authorized by the building permit at issue. Accordingly, the board finds that the appeal was premature and that the only question before the board at this time is whether the building commissioner erred in the issuance of the building permit. The board notes that if the applicant subsequently has an issue with the actual use made of the single-family dwelling after its completion, then an enforcement request could be filed with the building commission at that time.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan.
I would second it.
Any discussion on the motion? I need the following members to vote. Myself, Ms. Van Giesen, Mr. Mulligan, and
It's on
Mr. Todd.
YouTube. It's not on YouTube. It's on YouTube. However that works. Could I just ask a clarifying question of Mr. Evers?
Yes. Yes,
Have you issued any orders relative to this property since our decision?
No,
All right. And is it correct, Mr. Chairman, that our decision, would you state for the, would you read the bottom line of our decision?
the previous decision, Mr. Todd,
Please, sir.
we voted that the board affirm the decision of the building commissioner in granting the building permit number BP-19-440 on August 29th, 2019 to Hydrangea Properties LLC. That was all there was to the decision, was the vote duly made and seconded.
That the commissioner was in error and the commissioner was correct in issuing
Yes.
building permit.
Yes,
Now they're asking us why we think that?
that's what the judge wanted us to do.
Okay.
His language, or that was an order, it's an order. Who drafted the order, I'm not sure, but it's signed by Judge Farino in the Superior Court. And paragraph 3 says, the board shall, in the form of an amended decision, issue explicit additional findings, setting forth the basis for its November 6th, 2019 decision. And the language contained in the motion that I just made was, I understand that if that is adopted, that the Superior Court case will be ended. Then I'm going to ask to poll the following members. Mr. Marek, yes. Ms. Van Giesen,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes,
and Mr. Todd.
I apologize, but could I hear the motion stated again for the record, please?
Yes. The motion was to add the following finding and amend the previous decision by adding the following finding. After consideration of all the evidence, the board found that the applicant's appeal of the building permit focused solely on the applicant's contentions regarding the use intended to be made of the single-family home authorized by the building permit at issue. Accordingly, the board finds that the appeal was premature in that the only question before the board at this time is whether the building commissioner erred in the issuance of the building permit. The board notes that if the applicant subsequently has an issue with the actual use made of a single-family dwelling after its completion, then an enforcement request could be filed with the building commissioner at that time.
Yes.
And the motion carries unanimously 4-0. Thank you, members of the board. That will clarify. No, I will issue an amended decision in accordance with our movement tonight, and I'll report to you when that case is dismissed. I think it will be dismissed by agreement after having conferred with town council on the question. Very well. Then we will proceed with application number it's the application of Penrose LLC under Chapter 40B, property being located at 19 West Road at 10 Skated Corners, Orleans, Massachusetts. The application was duly noticed and all appropriate abutters have also been given notice. Is there anyone of the board have had any communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents, which ought to be disclosed to the board, the public, or would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest?
Michael, I was present for the applicant's presentation to the Orleans Affordable Trust Board presentation. Are you still indifferent? Yes, and that presentation was also disclosed in their application.
Very well. I declare that all members of the board are impartial and indifferent, and we can proceed with this application. May we all hear from the applicant?
Okay, Mike, I'm gonna let Charlie Adams in to speak. I'm assuming he's the applicant. He's got his hand raised.
I saw his name on the application. Yes, Mr. Adams.
All right, he's coming in as a panelist, so he can see.
Oh. Probably help if I unmuted myself. That probably would be better, right? Thank you. And if I could indulge, I've got Andrew Singer, our attorney, with us, as well as some members of our design team. Could I ask that they be let in as well? So that would be Andrew Stebbins, Joe Henderson, Rio Sacchetti, Mish Crowley. Did I get everybody? Who am I forgetting?
Those individuals may be admitted to the hearing.
All right, so I got Andrew, Mish Crowley.
I took myself on video.
I think I got everybody.
I think Rio Sacchetti, Ryan Kirikoff. Actually, he's not joining us. Ryan's Rio Sacchetti. Great.
I just added that person.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Joe Henderson. I don't see Joe on here.
Oh, I see Joe. Yeah.
He's essential. Okay.
Yeah.
Did I forget Andrew? Did I forget Michelle? Did I forget anybody? Forget everybody?
I think
Okay.
that's good.
I believe you're correct.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. And what we've done is we have a PowerPoint that I think will address many of your questions that you have for it. It's our first presentation here. We know we don't have all the answers, but what we really would like your feedback on the stuff that we have done. We have made some progress, a fair amount of progress since the materials that you do have in front of you. Because we've had some meetings with various folks, and I think we made some great improvements. I think you'll be pretty excited to see. And so we'll go through all that tonight. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I've got a little PowerPoint that I was hoping that I could go through. That's
Yes,
acceptable.
please,
Great. All right, I'm
you may do that.
gonna do my best to share my screen. Let's see if this works. How does that look? Does that look great?
Oh, yeah.
When people see the screen, it should say Orleans Cape Cod 5.
Yes.
Okay, great. This little bar, well, that's right. Okay. And then let me see if I can move this here to get out of the way so I can, okay. Well, okay, this should work. Okay. Basically, here we are today for it's the Cape Cod 5 Savings Bank, which you all know much better than we do in town. Just a little bit about what we want to do. I want to talk a little bit about who we are as Penrose and our team. We'll talk about the site, and then we'll get into our development concept and some of the public engagement and next steps. So just to give you a little background on who we are. So Penrose, we are a owner, manager, developer of multifamily housing. We're in about, well, I guess up at this point, almost 20 states in the District of Columbia. We've been around for about 40 years. And we've done over 17,000 units of housing in 265 plus developments throughout the community. Our sweet spot is partnering with cities and towns such as yourselves to work on creating sort of a shared vision, and the work that you guys have done already on this Cape Cod 5 Savings Bank, it was very meaningful, and we're trying to execute that vision for you. We can get a little bit into that. A bit more about who we are. Whoops, I don't know where that showed up. Penrose today. So even though we're a large company, we are still a very nimble, small company in a sense that we're basically we're a privately held corporation run by basically 3 principals. And so they're actively involved in all the work that we do. I mentioned we're active in those 20 states, and we actually have 6 offices specifically throughout our territories, one of which obviously is Boston, and that's where me and my team are based. Rio Sacchetti is on the phone with me representing our team from the Boston office. These are our core values. I won't go through all of them, but the one I think that's most critical and important is sort of the one that's right at the very top, collaboration, as I alluded to earlier. You know, we really try to approach developments with a sense of collaboration with the cities and towns in which we work. We're not interested in doing something that people aren't interested in, and so we really want to make something that the community will be proud of, and we'll be excited that we're doing in the community with them. So I throw up a little of this slide basically to show 2 things. One of which to show you that none of the things that you see on here is what you're going to get on the site. And the reason that is because every opportunity that we do, we develop it particularly unique to the site and the community in which it's located. And so that's the approach that we've taken for your site. And it's also a little different because there actually is an existing building that we're working off of. But I put this slide up to show you that, to give you a sense of some of the types of things that are important to us as a developer in terms of community spaces, access, individual access to units, differentiation of buildings, even when they're larger to make them appear smaller, active spaces for gathering and for recreation. A little bit about how we sort of came here. Many of you may know us from the work we just completed in Eastham, a very exciting project that we did in the next town over. And we were very pleased that the town of Orleans actually supported the work that we did there through the CPC. We were very appreciative of receiving $100,000 from the CPC for the work we did there. That development is now complete. It's 65 units of housing. So it's going to be very similar to the concept here that we have 62 units here. There we have 65, 10 of which are for workforce, and the rest are what we call affordable, and we'll get a little bit into that. This is a vision of our community room that we have at our site in Eastham. We won't have a separate community building here. There's not a room for it on the site, but this gives you sort of a sense of some of the furnishings and things you'll see that will appear in the building. So a little bit about the site, where we are. Obviously, you know much better than we do, but just to orient folks, this is the site where the Cape Cod 5 Savings Bank is. One of the things that we're picking up on is the previous feasibility studies. You folks as a town, particularly the Board of Selectmen and pulling in the Affordable Housing Trust and other groups, have spent a long time actually looking at this site and targeting it for use as affordable housing. And so there have been, as you know, a number of studies that you commissioned as a town to work on it with the bank. We were able to look at those studies, follow those studies, and actually come up with a scheme that represented the vision of the site that the community actually wanted to see at that. So there were a number of options that were presented, and we've tried to model our plan on the one that folks were most interested in seeing there. We do have a purchase and sale agreement in place with Cape Cod 5 Savings Bank. They've been a great partner to work with and are very committed to seeing this happen at the site in terms of it being developed for mixed income housing. So obviously, you know about the building. It's for those of you that don't know about it, it's very interesting because it was developed, it was renovated over time. Originally, this is the original building, which is actually the back of the building now. So this is the original building, had an entrance off of the back. As you progress around the building, sort of orient yourselves to if I go back to this slide here. So this former entrance is off on the back on the left-hand side of the slide in the back of the building. The new entrance you can see is off to the right. It was added on to. Here's the new entrance for the building. We'll be maintaining that access to the building and then adding on to the site over here to the right, which you'll see. The site itself is actually 2 parcels put together that total about 3.5 acres that you can see on here. Here's the main entry, and here's the existing building. If you can see my cursor, I don't know if you can. Okay, good, you can. I see someone nodding. So this was the original entrance. This is the new entrance, and this section was added on to create that new entrance. A little bit about the income mix I mentioned before. There are 62 total units. 52 will be in the main building, and 10 will be in townhouses across the road. The breakdown that you see here basically represents what can be accommodated within the existing building, and also tries to get as close as we can to the state preferences for the number of how they like to see the bedrooms broken down in terms of 2 and 3 bedroom units. So they will include units at various income levels. About 13% of the units will be for folks at 30% of the area median income. 10 of the units will be at workforce, and then the balance would be at 60% of AMI. Now the units at 60 and 30% are what we call, they would actually qualify for the low income housing tax credit, which is the primary vehicle for which these developments get built by. A little bit about the work we've done to date, some of which you guys have letters of support in there for. So we've already met with the Affordable Housing Trust, which I believe has provided a letter of support for the project. They're very excited to see it happen. We're trying to schedule a meeting with the Community Development Partnership where we could talk to all of the local communities to tell them about the project. We have already met with the Orleans Select Board. I believe you have a letter of support from them. We've also been working with them on a community benefits agreement, which we should be finalizing in the next couple of weeks. I've been talking to the Cape Cod Light Compact about some energy improvement and work we could do there. We have a meeting with the Community Preservation Committee. Originally, it was set up for tomorrow night. It had to get postponed, I believe, to the following week. So a week from tomorrow, we'll be going before the Community Preservation Committee to seek some funding for that project. One of the things that we had done in Eastham, as you know, because we got funding from the town of Orleans for that project, is reaching out to other towns. And so we actually are actively reaching out to other towns for financial support for this project as well. We've already met with the Eastham CPC, and they've passed a recommendation to town meeting to give us $100,000. And we have other meetings lined up with some of the other the other 5 Cape towns besides Orleans, besides Eastham, excuse me, and yourselves. That's not what I wanted to do. I think I just messed that up. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. What I wanted to do now is turn it over to Andrew Singer, who's going to walk you through a little bit about sort of the 40B process and next steps, and then we'll have our civil engineer, our landscape architect, and our architect actually walk you through the specific plans. Andrew, can I turn it over to you now?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Singer. I'm an attorney in Dennisport representing the applicant. I apologize, I'm having camera issues tonight. I hope you can all hear me, but you won't be able to see me. This is an application, as you've said, under the comprehensive permit law, and the comprehensive permit law was created in 1969 in order to encourage the development of quality housing in Massachusetts communities that is genuinely affordable for their residents. The Commonwealth has established a 10% goal for each community to have at least that much of its year-round housing stock be affordable. The town of Orleans has done a wonderful job and is within reaching distance of this goal. The town is currently at 9.33%. I believe it's the highest percentage on Cape Cod at the moment. For comprehensive permits, you, the Board of Appeals, are appointed as the decision maker for all local permits. So if any permits were needed from other local boards, you're the one that grants them. In this case, there are no wetlands involved with this property, and the project will be attached to the town's sewer, and there are no state permits required. So you are right now seeking, and you get comments from other local boards, you are the decision maker. You act on a comprehensive permit by majority vote, which is different than your typical actions under special permit and variance requirements. In accordance with the rules and regulations that have been issued by the state, the applicant has to demonstrate 3 jurisdictional matters to you to support his proposal. The first is that the applicant must be either a public agency, a nonprofit organization, or a limited dividend organization. Penrose, the applicant, will be a limited dividend organization. Second, the project must be fundable by a subsidizing agency under a low and moderate income housing subsidy program. That is evidenced by a project eligibility letter. Such a letter was just issued yesterday. A copy has been provided to George Meservey, and Mr. Chairman, a copy will be provided to everybody so that you have that for ultimate review purposes. It does find that the applicant and the application and the project are fundable. The third jurisdictional matter is that the applicant have the site under control, and the applicant in this case does have a purchase and sale agreement with the Cape Cod 5, evidencing that site control. When you review a comprehensive permit request, the legal standard that you look at and that you need to determine is if the proposed development is consistent with local needs. Approval with conditions is allowed if such conditions do not render the development uneconomic. Now, arriving at what is consistent with local needs and what is economic involves a flexible balancing test and a series of compromises among several worthwhile and competing local rules, regulations, and policies. You'll be balancing the need for affordable housing with zoning, environmental, health, safety, site design, open space, and planning impacts. The goal is to create quality housing that is affordable for qualified individuals and families, and which will be a source of pride for not only the applicant and the residents, but also the town. The applicant respectfully submits that at the conclusion of the hearing process, beginning tonight, that the proposal is consistent with local needs. We submit that we will be demonstrating to you that it will not have a material detrimental effect on the character of the neighborhood or town, that it is worthy of approval. We had submitted a summary of reasoning to you that has everything that I'm saying and others are saying in writing. And that those, I won't go through all of those since you're going to hear from all the project representatives, but those demonstrate the worth and the merit of the proposal in line with, as Mr. Adams mentioned, all of the studies that the town has undertaken seeking to develop this property for affordable housing. Now, the goal of a comprehensive permit is to realize this affordable housing with appropriate levels of compliance. Not all requirements have to be met. You are empowered to waive local requirements in the balancing of local needs. Waivers are not variances in the sense that you typically look at them, that you do not have to find for the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 10 requirements. You have to find only that the request is in line with balancing the needs so that this housing can be provided. Thus, the application is requesting some waivers. These waivers were set forth expressly in the application. They are also in the summary of reasoning that we submitted. I'm going to go over them now just briefly, and I understand the board will want to be very clear about those waivers so that the decision ultimately is inclusive. The waiver requests, there are a few of them on page 6 of the summary of reasoning. They deal with the maximum building height for the existing buildings, the apartment density, the septic system certification, in this case, the septic system is being discontinued when the property goes on town sewer. There's a waiver request for additional pre-construction site plan review if it's determined necessary. We have been before site plan review and we will be going there again in addition to reviewing with the Architectural Review Committee. And there's a request for a waiver to have 1.25 parking spaces per unit, including visitors, and for certain parking lot plantings and floor area ratio. Finally, we do request in all 40Bs a waiver as necessary from Cape Cod Commission regulations, because under state law and under its charter, the Cape Cod Commission is a local board for purposes of 40B. And so their requirements are not expressly applicable to such projects. In this case, a project of 30 or more residential units. That is a brief overview of the legal arrangement for the proposal. We'll be happy to answer any questions. With now, I believe I'm going to be turning it over to Joe Henderson to discuss the site plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singer.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Joe Henderson with Horsley Witten Group, and we are the site civil engineers for this project. And Charlie, are you gonna continue to?
I can do that if that's easier for you. I'm happy to do that.
It's up to you. Yeah, if you wanna.
Yeah.
Why don't I share my screen, actually?
Okay.
I think that'll be easier.
Great.
Probably safer.
Yeah,
I'd probably mess it up.
I think you need to stop
Oh,
sharing.
I have to stop sharing. See, I've already messed it up.
There we go. Let's see, so I wanna share. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm showing the civil concept plan that was submitted as part of the package. And I'm just going to talk through some of those site design elements, and then I'm going to take a look at some additional updates that we've done since this time, just in an illustrative version of our site plan. But just to kind of recap what Charlie had said, the site, it's about 3.4 acres total with the two parcels. There's an existing building, existing parking, also existing infrastructure on the site, water, septic system, and electric and gas utilities. The proposed project is to expand on the existing building and also add 2 new townhome units along the entrance drive. Access is from West Road, so we'll be maintaining the same entrance drive as is there right now, and also maintaining that split entrance. We have a 2 12-foot lanes coming into the site, a 24-foot wide access road with parking on either side, running closely to what was already there on the site. We are expanding it a little further to the west to accommodate some additional parking, and to also accommodate some access to the rear of the building for fire, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. Our stormwater design will be based on green infrastructure practices. We'll be using bioretention systems for the water quality treatment, and we'll be using underground infiltration for the larger storms infiltration. And that design will meet the stormwater mass stormwater management policy. We are abandoning the existing septic as previously mentioned, and we've coordinated with the new sewer that's going in. So we'll be proposing a gravity sewer connection to that. We also will be connecting to the existing water line that connects into the site with some coordination with the water department. And we also have, again, electric and gas on the site. One of the features that we are showing, you can see there's, we have some new sidewalks. We do have a maintenance access, which I can talk about in a second. That's a little bit different now. And I am going to swap to the next slide. There we go. So this is just something that you probably haven't seen, but I just wanted to walk through some of these illustrative items. You can see that we are showing a walking path through this rear area, and our landscape architect can talk about that more if needed. We have, again, met with site plan review, and they gave us a lot of good comments. And just to point out some of the major ones that we did add is we are now proposing a fire access lane around the rear of the building as the fire department requested. This will allow them to gain access, obviously, in case of emergencies. We are also going to work on looking at the entrance drive and just making sure we have the proper site distances here for cars coming in and out in relation to these first few parking spaces for the townhomes. We also received comments from the water department, and we'll be working with them closely on the exact location of the water connections. The water does loop through the site and into the back by the Skakit Marketplace. A couple site amenity features. We do have a walkway to the adjacent marketplace. There is some landscaping features throughout the building that our landscape architect can talk about. And I think that's all I really wanted to cover. Maybe I can pass it along to Mish to discuss some of our landscape features.
Mish, you're on mute.
Unmute.
Sorry, it was suddenly dinner time at downstairs, so I had to move. I'm Michelle Crowley, the principal at Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architecture. And just to go off more from what Joe was saying, on the right-hand side of the screen right now is where we're proposing a playground, as well as community gardens with a picnic table. There's quite a bit of topography in this area that is existing. I don't know if you remember from the original image that Charlie showed. There's a sort of a steep slope with all the stairs, and we're going to be maintaining that sloped area in there to as much a degree as we can. But then we have this walking trail that goes, or exercise trail that can go all the way around, that goes around the building, and then it also goes around the area in the woodland area on the backs of the townhouses, as Joe pointed out. We're using all native plantings throughout the site. And in the front of the building, we have several walkways that go to the front door, and then we have a larger terrace, again with some planting intermixed in there, but this is more of the community gathering space. We're showing several bike racks in multiple locations, and we're across the parking area is a hedge of evergreens, because so that we can screen the parking for the neighbors. And then the yellow and blue are different lighting. So street lighting for the parking, some post lights, and then the blue lights would be more of a bollard light, so at more of a pedestrian scale for the lighting. In the bioretention ponds that Joe discussed, you can see a couple right in the center of the screen here. Those would be planted with native plants and with that flower, different seasonal interest. And so we think of these as an amenity to the site. The idea is these aren't just these pits that you sometimes see outside shopping malls. And so we think it's front and center. So we want to make sure that that's planted really beautifully. I think that might be it, unless I forgot something. Charlie, did I forget? And so nope. I'll move on to Andrew, who's going to talk about the architecture.
Sure, thanks, Mish. Actually, I think the previous slide's a little better for the ground floor plan. Just you can see the site a little better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board for meeting with us tonight. My name is Andrew Stebbins. I'm a senior project manager for the architectural team. I've had the pleasure of working with Charlie and the Penrose team on the Eastham job, bringing that project to life, and working with them on several other deals, similar deals such as Wareham. So we're excited to be here. It's a great building, a great candidate for rehabilitation. We do all sorts of projects in our office, all sorts of multifamily. We do new construction. We were born on rehabilitation projects. Though this is not a historic rehabilitation, this is, a project which we feel is a building with a really good bones and a really good candidate. as evidenced by, the initial studies that were done by the town that we, leapfrog from. So as Charlie had mentioned, the building on the box on the far right is the original building with the entrance to the bottom right there. And then the addition to the building was in the middle piece here. So the nice thing about these buildings is that they're metal frame. The original building was a steel joist structure with concrete, and then the building in the middle, the addition is concrete and steel, which makes it nice. We can work unit footprints into the plan without having to deal with existing bearing conditions. The challenge is the building is a bit wider than normal, which is fine. And then especially on this this plan, which Misha referenced and Joe has referenced too, is that the building, the site slopes from the top of the page up to the back of the page. So all these areas towards the bottom of the page, as you go around the existing building and the proposed, are actually set into grade. The fully built out in the existing buildings, and in our proposed project, you'll see there's an area that's called out as unexcavated. So it'll be 3 stories at the top of the page, and then the back of the building will only be 2 stories. The way the building works now, as Charlie had said, we're going to reutilize the existing entry. We have proposed a leasing area with visibility to the front, a new service area, as Joe had mentioned, up to the upper right. And then the middle portion has some nice amount of square footage for some nice interior amenities, some with a natural light. We have a club room which spills out to Misha's courtyard that she described, and some other program which may not need natural light, such as a fitness room and other maybe business centers, another program that can be set into the hill. Next slide, I guess. So here's an image of the first floor. So you can see where we're noting the line between the existing rehabilitated building and the wood framed addition. So the wood frame addition is proposed to be 3 stories, will be aligning with the floor levels of the existing building, but building the building out of wood frame construction, which is allowable by code. Next slide. So as we move up to the next floor, so you can see here we have a pretty efficient building. It's a double loaded corridor, which is great, very efficient. The unit sizes are going to be, very similar to projects where we're not running into an existing building. I'd say the other a few challenges we have found since we made the initial submission that was submitted in December is a couple of things. Number one, we'll likely need to provide more openings than that are there today. So some of the living rooms will need 2 windows, and so some of these areas we will need additional openings. In addition to that, we reviewed the building and its metal stud construction on the exterior, and if we're going to insulate the building correctly, we'll want to reskin the building. So the original submission, we pretty much implied that we're going to keep the skin. So we're working on revisions to design while reviewing the Orleans design guidelines and in preparation for a submission to the design review board. Next slide. So this is a continuation of the floor below. What I mentioned is once again, existing building works well, had 2 egress stairs, has the existing elevator, which we can rehabilitate. On the left side of the new building, we have another elevator for ease of access and movement through the building. Fortunate that the existing site has a generator that we expect to be able to reuse for the project, which is great. So we can help power up some of the commons in an outage. Next slide. So that's the flats building, we'll call it. So the townhouse building here, so we arranged these townhouse buildings to be street facing. but they're also designed to be less like chopped up townhouses. The massing and the design is going to assimilate to a single building with multiple entries. We feel like that massing and the size of that building will play well with the existing flats building. So as we continue to work on the design, we'll see that materialize. But generally, yeah, each building has 5 units. The building on the right is just 5 townhouses, which run from the first floor to the 3rd floor if they're 3-bedroom, first and second floor for 2 bedrooms. And on the left side, we do have a larger box, so we do provide a handicap flat style 3-bedroom, so that there's a handicap 3-bedroom for the project. So there are only 3 units showing. I'm sorry, 4 units showing on this ground floor, but there is an additional unit above. So each building has 5 units each. I think that's it. Next slide. I think we're thanking people. Thank you.
You're muted, Charlie.
All right, let me try that again. Thank you for letting us go into that presentation, and obviously we're open to any questions, comments, feedback. If we could, Joe, maybe if you're controlling it, could you go back to the overall site plan? Probably be the yeah, this one here probably is best.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we welcome your questions on the project.
Very well. Before I do not have a letter from the select board in the file. We also do not have a letter from the Orleans Affordable Housing Trust. I understand that the letter from the Department of Housing and Community Development is hot off the press.
That is correct, dated yesterday.
Okay. What we are trying to determine is, since the Zoning Board of Appeals has primary and umbrella supervision of the permitting, that we have an application that is complete as possible. I would appreciate the having the letter from the state, which vets the program before.
Yes, we can get that to you. I can we sent, as we said, we sent it to George yesterday. We can get it out to as well. I didn't realize that you guys hadn't gotten it, but we can get it out to you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I also could point out, I will get you a copy. On December 16th, the select board sent a letter to the Department of Housing and Community Development in connection with the project eligibility letter, discussing the working with the applicant on the proposal, and we will get you that copy of that letter as well for your file if you do not have it.
That would be good. The what I'm driving at is that we know that the town planner requested some of the town agencies to comment upon the application in its condition on December 8th. And all we have is right now is some comments from Mr. Missouri, the planner, and the letter from the planning board. Now, ordinarily, the zoning board would have sent a blanket request to maybe 8 or 10 of the agencies, some of which really I don't think are appropriate, but I want to make sure that if there's input from the agencies or commissions, that they're thorough, or those or a representative ought to be talking to the board, say tonight or at any continued date. And that's my concern, because if we see fit to permit, then we need the input, and having the opportunity to input, I think it's probably been done, but I want to make sure so that I and my colleagues have the benefit of those reviews, since we may be needing to draft conditions to attach to the permitting. So that's my concern, that I would like all documents to be funneled and eventually end up in this application file with the building commission.
We can certainly, at the end of the night, we're going to be requesting a continuance, and we can certainly work with your staff and George and make sure that you have that complete file that you ultimately need for your decision.
Right, because my intention, as I've discussed, subject to the approval of and input of my colleagues, is to eventually draft a decision and settle it up with one final hearing. We'll probably have that, and some of that is negotiated. It is a bear to do that, because there's no way that we can, we're not sitting down in the same room and working it out. And but we can do this. We can do this. So those are my preliminary questions. Have you had the benefit of the lengthy report from the traffic consultant?
Yes, we've got the report from the traffic consultant. We commissioned that. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, that was our report.
He had that consultant, on page 8, had some recommendations concerning project access and some comments under the title Transportation Demand Management that you ought to be talking about, whether those comments were sensible, whether they were justified, and whether they're subject to acceptable conditions. So,
yeah.
And you may not be ready to do that tonight, or maybe you are.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're working with is on the making some revisions to, as you heard from our folks, is at that front entrance, some of the parking. So I think that some of those will address some of the concerns that he had, or some of the things he raised about the entrance. The thing that the most important thing is that there's no increase in the traffic count there in terms of level of service, which I think
that was very clear.
Yeah.
And,
so. And we're looking at a couple of those other ones, and so they'll be factored into a refined plan.
Very well. I think.
I mean, the key critical one, Mr. Chair, is really making sure that the fire department has the access around the building, and that was the biggest input we got when we had that meeting with the department heads. And so our team has done a good job here of being able to create a path around there. And we need to finalize and make sure that the fire department is comfortable with what we've done here, which we believe that they will be based on the feedback that we got. But we do need to put this in front of them, make sure he's on board with what we've done.
And what we've seen in the past is that the fire department would talk about access, and depending on the size of their engines, and that might be subject to condition, but maybe not, depending on. I mean, I haven't. Fire chief has, or his designee is not here tonight, I don't think. And
yeah, so I think our goal. Sorry, I apologize.
I mean, if you're adopting eventually a particular plan, and we refer to that in the permitting document, then that will carry through and then it becomes engraved in stone. And we don't have to worry so much. We may not, subject to what my colleagues think, of attaching a petition to make sure
Yeah.
that you have that passed. You see
That's
what I mean?
correct. Yeah, yeah. So what we'll do is our goal for a continuation, as you heard, we will ask for a continuation. Our goal between now and then is to actually come back and have sign off from the fire department that we've done it correctly. And if we haven't, we'll continue to figure out how to do it so that we have that. One thing I just wanted to say about the entrance, you know, what I would really love to do is to keep this boulevard here. I think it's a great amenity for the site. It's a gorgeous entrance to it. And so, you know, our team has really worked hard. I've asked them to work really hard to try to figure out how to keep that boulevard. And so that's created some additional challenges for us on how to do that in terms of some of the traffic and parking. We're going to continue to work to figure out that we can make that work. Ultimately, if we can't, we'd have to get rid of the boulevard, and that would solve some of these issues and concerns that folks have. But our goal really is to try to not do that, really try to keep that boulevard. So that's what we're going to be trying to do between now and the next time we meet.
Well, I'm looking at at the overhead which Joe Henderson put up. That wasn't part. See, that wasn't part of it. It's extremely illustrative and simple to understand, but it's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah, no, we do recognize it was the first time we've seen it. We were trying to get information into you as quick as we could to get on the agenda, and we knew that after we had submitted the information to you, we did have that meeting with the departments, and we wanted to go ahead and start to address their concerns and see the progress that we've made. Obviously, this is the first time you're looking at this, so you'll have this. We'll send this to you, and you'll have this now. If you want to make additional comments, to think about it and look at it by the next time we come.
Good. That would be great.
Yeah, but we think this is much better than the original thing that we sent. I think this, it's really coming along.
Yes. Another thought of mine is you're looking for a waiver, for example, of height, but I couldn't find anywhere in the documents, plans accompanying the application what height you do have for any of the buildings.
Andrew, do you want to comment on that?
I could add between hash marks, but that still was something above that, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
I know the height of each floor, for example, but
we don't
doesn't know. Well, we know what the cap is, but where are you gonna be, so that we're waiving? We know what we're waiving, or at least the public will know what we've done with it.
We won't ask you to do that basic math. We'll do it for you. We'll have our architect do that. Andrew, Andrew Stebbins, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll just talk briefly. So obviously the building's there and it's existing. So the interesting thing with these type of roofs, if you notice in the existing aerial, it's a flat roof building with a mansard attached to it. And so at some points, depending upon the way the town's bylaws read, they'll measure the height to the flat area and call the additional roof a screen. And other times we'll have boards that will define the roof to the midpoint or the top of the mansard. So I think it kind of depends where we measure. Obviously, we're dealing with an existing structure, so we're not proposing anything that's taller than that's there now. So I think we had put that in the waivers just as a question, insofar that if it's determined that the height is not met, that we get the waiver. But just to be clear, the townhouses will be shorter than have less height than the existing building, and then the proposed building is really just continuing the roof lines of the existing building. So as we revise this, we'll look and update our exhibits to make that more clear. And if I have a question, maybe I can reach out to the town, whether it's the building inspector, just to make sure we have a clear understanding of how that's measured.
Might very well be in the documents on the original permit for the existing structure. But that was just a
Point.
comment. I didn't know how high it was. I'm opening this to questions by other members of the board. Does any member of the board have a question of any of the speakers?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The 62 units that you're talking about, that includes basically the 9 townhouse units, which are shown as 2 separate buildings, 5 and 4.
Yes, there actually are, even though there are 4 there actually are 10 units here. Andrew, right? One of them stacked.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't describe that very well. So on the left building, there's 3 townhouses which go all the way up, and then the last 2 units are this rectangle that stacks one on top of the other. So one's a flat that you walk into, it's single story, and then the one above it has a stair that runs up to the same sort of shape. So there are 5 units per building.
And one of the reasons we do that too is for handicap accessibility. A certain percentage of units will be fully accessible. So that's why you have a flat there. Just to follow up on that specific note, just to, if people didn't pick that up, but of the townhomes, each of them have their own individual entry. That's really key and important. So there are no shared common hallways with anybody. That's critically important.
So the 62 units does include 10, which are in the townhouse building.
Correct.
The basic description in the plans of the 62 units is referred to as the flats building, I think, with breaking out that's not I understand what you're saying, but.
Oh, maybe we said it wrong. I apologize. Yeah, so it's 52 units in the main building with the addition, and then 10 townhomes.
Second question is, when they broke down 30, 60, 10, with 10 being workforce percentages, what does the workforce term mean?
Sure. Let me clarify. It's actually not 10%. It's actually 10 total. So 10 of the 62 will be workforce. So workforce is a program that the mass housing specifically has funding for, that you can apply for, and their definition is either 100 up to 110 or 120% of the area median income. And I know you're going to ask me what that is, and I don't know the answer to that, but I'm hoping Rio might be able to quickly get that answer for us on what that is. But essentially, they will allow it to go up to either of those AMIs, and they do an analysis of what the demographics are in the town, and to figure out where the rents are, and then they'll set it at either the 110 or the 120%. That's why I don't have a specific answer for you.
Okay, but they are not considered to be what might be also called affordable. In other words,
Well, we think, I mean, it's just the terms that are used for the different pieces. I think of all this stuff as being affordable for folks that need it. When we use the term affordable, we're really sort of specific, talking about the low-income housing tax credit program, and that's for 60% of AMI and below. So if a unit is at that income level, then it qualifies for low-income housing tax credits.
If I could also just add, Mr. Waugh, because this is a rental community, although 10 of the units will be workforce housing, all 62 units will count towards the town's subsidized housing inventory.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I should have made that clear. That's yes.
Well, Mr. Singer, I mean, I know this, since it's rental, how does the town know that the tenancies will be qualified or be restricted in that fashion? I mean, it's one thing to have deed restrictions, but this is not that kind of project. So how do we concern ourselves with that problem?
I'll actually, I can let Mr. Adams refer to that, but there are monitoring agreements and other operational documents that they need to comply with to assure the affordability.
Okay, now is that done with the Department of Housing and Community Development
Yeah, there are is incredible amount of oversight for these projects, as you can imagine, right? Because you're getting public resources. So our management company, ensures that people meet the income requirements, and then we're audited and analyzed, and we have certifications that we have to make to the state, to our investors, throughout that whole process. So there's plenty of belts and suspenders, making sure that the property is leased the way it was committed to from the beginning.
And there will be some, we'll have to get a letter from the Department of Housing and Community Development. Yeah,
so part of the, and maybe Frio's on it, maybe he could speak a little bit more to this, but a part of the process with the, going through this process is that one of the additional certifications is at the end, we need to report back at the end of the project. Part of our closeout of the project is reporting back to DHCD, which provides the credits on closing out the comprehensive permit and showing that we met the conditions that we committed to with you.
Okay.
I think you've sort of answered my question, saying that basically to be controlled. The other part of that, I would presume potentially then, based on what I've seen in the drawings, that so-called 10% of workforce probably cost-wise would be more like the townhouses.
So we're not planning to put the workforce in the townhomes or the main building necessarily one way or another. We're not targeting that. What the workforce housing units though is they typically are not 1 bedrooms. They're typically 2 and 3 bedroom units because they're trying to get to workforce families. So that's where they'll be concentrated. So to the extent that there are more 2s and 3s in the townhomes, then more of those units would be for workforce. But there will be some 2 bedrooms in the main building, and some of those will be labeled as workforce as well. So
the second question basically is with respect to sewers. And I guess one of the conditions, and that's certainly up to judgment, but obviously you cannot open this facility until the town sewage treatment plant is ready and you can provide a hook to it.
Correct.
So whatever, I'm not sure what your schedule for finishing this is, but that gets involved.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, with these projects, excuse me, they're subject to annual funding rounds. And so, based on that, it will be, we'll get the approvals, and then it'll take a little while to get the funding, and then we'll have to close and be in construction. It'll probably be an 18-month construction schedule. So we have looked at that, and we wouldn't need the sewer for, the sewer will be ready by the time we're ready to start leasing the units. Let me say it that way.
So it'll be sometime in 22.
Correct. At the earliest. That'll be the very earliest. Yeah.
And I guess I'll just throw this out because I have no idea what I'm saying. But when you hook up to the sewers, as we're going through in town now, there certainly are costs involved, like betterments for the people that have property that use the sewer. So I don't know how that will be developed or exposed, but I just want to mention it's certainly in the back of my mind, someplace that's an issue that has to be answered.
Yeah, and I think it's, and I'm sort of scratching the surface here a little bit on that, as you may be close to that, Nara, but that's still things that the town is working out themselves too, in terms of what those are. So we understand that's going to be part of the process. We're going to understand we'll have to build that into our budget, and we'll work with the town to figure out what those are when you guys have more clarity on what you're looking for that as a town, I should say.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chairman?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yeah.
you have a question?
Thank you. There's 2 questions sort of related to the density issue, the waiver you're looking for, the density. The first one is sort of ancillary. Could you give us some idea of the square footage in the various 1, 2, 3 bedrooms? And then the more salient question is, you're doing a lot of additional construction. How did you stop at 62? What's the magic in 62?
Sure. I'll do them in reverse order. I can handle the 62, and then I'll ask Andrew to do about the square footages. So, when you get to around that number of units, so I mean, there's a couple of things. So one, we look at these projects for financial feasibility, and there's sort of a critical mass that's needed to to get to a level that makes them financially feasible in terms of number of units. On the other side of that financial feasibility, there's also a limitation about what resources are available for the state. So it ends up putting you in that box of, say, around 60 units, plus or minus. And so that's kind of the box where these projects are most financially feasible. We also, though, don't want to overload the site, right? So we wanted to maintain some open space here. One of the schemes we originally came up with had some additional units that pushed up at the top of the page, and we were up around 67 units. We could actually get some more units up here and build up into that that little rectangular piece that you see going up. I wasn't comfortable doing that. I felt that was too much for the site. It was too many units on site. It was taking away too much open space. So we pulled back from that and wanted to maintain that open space there and pull back to a 62 unit model. And that's sort of how we came up with that concept.
So the financing box is sort of it's not really a box. It's a minimum threshold, and you got to get to 60. And then is it gravy over 60? In other words.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it gravy because all the units need to be subsidized. So no one unit, there's no one unit that supports itself from in terms of the cost of construction, right? So we need subsidy for all the units to build them just because the cost of construction is so high and the amount of debt that you could generate from the income doesn't support the cost of the construction. But the limiting factor, excuse me, I can't talk, becomes the state only allows sort of so much money per project. There are certain funding caps on some of the sources that we use. So not to get too much in the weeds, but the low-income housing tax credit is the primary vehicle. That's tapped out at $10 million of credit for each project. And then there are various soft loan programs that they have, affordable housing trust funds, housing stabilization funds, a whole variety of programs, and each of those has their own individual cap. So when you start to layer them up, that starts to be the place where you start to max out. Now, that's another reason why we're doing the workforce units, those 10, because that allows us to tap into some additional resources from mass housing at about 100,000 per unit. That'll help to pay for those units as well. So it's kind of an iterative process.
Yeah, I got it. Good. Well, thank you. That's very clear. Now, what about the size of the units?
Yeah, Andrew, do you want to talk about the square footages for the 1s, 2s, and 3s? Andrew Stebbins?
Sure. Yeah, so the ones are, so this project's interesting because we're fitting into an existing footprint here. So no, the proposed building, we have a little more control about, the box sizes. Those are approximately 650 to 670 square feet. And that's DHCD likes to measure from the inside face of the drywall around the box. And then the 2s will be anywhere from 900 to 1,000 on the flats, and then the townhouses are a little bigger than that because we have to account for the stair access up to about 1,100, and then the 3 bedrooms are 1,250 to 1,300. Once again, those are just in the townhouse units in this case.
Thank you.
Any other questions by members of the board?
Yeah, I do. Yes. My question is about parking. And the first one is just to make sure I understand the waiver that you're asking for, which I read the part of the zoning regulations that said that if the parking reduction is greater than 20% of what is required, then you have to get a waiver. So I take it it's greater than 20% from what the standard is. Is that right?
Andrew or Joe, can you comment on, do you know what the
This is Andrew Singer. We can confirm this for you, but our understanding is that in for this proposal, it wasn't so much a reduction of 20% or more. It was that the standard parking is 1.5 spaces per apartment unit, and what is being proposed is 1.26. And
Right?
so that was that was under a 40B scenario. It was the number is the rationale for the request for the waiver.
Okay, so normally it would be 1.5, and what we're going to have is 1.26.
Correct.
So my question is, if a lot of people that live here have two jobs, two jobs, and they each need a car, and there's not enough parking, what happens?
Yeah, so I mean that's going to be people's individual choice, right? If they can't have two cars here, this may not be the best place they may want to live if there's not room there. Let me just give you a little bit of background. In our project in Eastham, we have 65 units and we have 65 cars, so we have a 1-to-1 ratio there. So we're not too concerned that that would be a problem here. But actually, those are people's choices. If they have 3 cars, and this may not be the place that they want to live, right? So, but we're not too worried that's going to be an issue here, because we feel we will have parking to accommodate anybody that would want to live here, because of the ratios that we have down in Eastham.
Okay. So, well, you're saying it's 1-to-1, right? Just 1 car per unit in Eastham. Yeah,
we have 65 cars and 65 units there. And
you have 25% more here.
Correct. Right. And we have more capacity there as well. It's just utilization. That's what I'm saying. We have, yeah. I'm not saying we build a 1-to-1, but I'm saying that we actually, we feel good enough. As long as we're over 1-to-1, we should be able to, it should be fine. Okay. It's getting someplace on the Cape. I don't know how good the public transportation is. But I don't think it's great. So going to a job, generally people need a car, right?
One thing, you're absolutely correct. One of the benefits of this project, when the state is looking at 40Bs, they like to have them near commercial centers as well as transportation zones. And in this case, you have a commercial center right next door.
Right. And can people park there? Can they leave their car there overnight?
It's private property, so I wouldn't want to, it's a separate property. It's not there, but there is a bus service route that does come right onto that property, and is going to be a pedestrian connection between this site and Skakit Corners,
right?
So that people can get up to not only the shopping but also to the bus.
Okay, I guess I'd ask you, what is typical in a development like this? When you say, well, this isn't for you if you need more than 1 car, a lot of people, what's typical for something like this? Is this where you're at? Is this pretty much what you do, 1.25, and that works out, and there's plenty of people whose needs that meets?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different. Every site is different. Every place is different, right? But we're confident that that's going to be enough parking, for folks. I mean, ultimately, it's if there isn't enough parking here, then we're not able to lease the units, and that's on us, and we lose rent, and we lose credits and all that. So I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that that ratio is enough. And based on the experience that we have across our portfolio, through our other sites throughout, this area and in other locations, that ratio I feel is sufficient for a site of this kind with a number of 1 bedrooms and that we have here, particularly.
Questions by the board? Any other questions by the board?
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Thank you. This appears to be a great development and one that will be an asset for the town. I'm pleased that you're looking to make an investment here. We have a published study that says that we need over 100 additional units, and this will take us a long way towards that goal, albeit occupancy a couple years from now. The presentation was fairly brief. This is a large and substantial project. We have others coming up in town. It'll be important that these projects get executed in a successful manner. Can you walk us through the aesthetics and how this will fit into the neighborhood, particularly the addition and the new buildings? I don't think we spent much time on the elevation drawings, and perhaps you could pull those up and just talk about the aesthetics and how what materials will be used and how that'll fit into the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Andrew Stebbins talk a little bit about that. We can answer your questions generally tonight, but not specifically, and that's why we'll come back again. So we've been moving this along, focusing on the site plan. We need to have the elevation pieces pick up. We're aware of that. We need to get you some, show you what this outside is going to look like. We don't have that information to show you any drawings tonight, but we're going to give you Andrew will talk generally what they will look like, and for when we come back to you, we'll have a presentation to actually show you some of the elevations and get you, so you can actually see what we're talking about.
Yeah, Charlie, good point. I kind of alluded to it in the presentation, but with the change in the approach of reskinning the building, we'll have a little more flexibility for what the building will look like. We're likely going to keep the brick on the front entry, just because we don't need to reskin that for energy wise, because it's just the lobby area. But we'll lean on the Orleans design guidelines for guidance in reskinning the building, but it'll definitely have sort of residential feeling of the building, with a combination of lap siding, probably some areas of shingle siding, potentially some vertical siding to help break down the buildings. We'll also use have the use of color to help break down the buildings, but I wouldn't want to specifically point to any elevations today, because there really are. This is sort of early in the process. We'll really have another iteration that's going to be coming that will be closer to what we're intending to perform here.
Would you be open to a condition that prevents vinyl siding?
I think we'd like to stay away from that, because that is something that we often have to use. The vinyl siding, though, can be made to look like what we did in Eastham. We did the sort of the sheeter single type looking siding, and so you can't, that it blends in with what the aesthetic is of the Cape. But we need to evaluate that, and I don't think we could take that off the table at this point.
I don't think the aesthetics achieved in Eastham are really attractive, and I hope that we can get a better project here. We're a green community, and we have a stretch energy code. Can you talk about the energy efficiency level of these buildings and how your design addresses that?
Andrew, do you want to take that one too?
Sure. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we're going to reskin the existing building, which has metal studs, so that we can meet the stretch energy code. The project being 3 stories, we'll be providing, we'll be meeting an Energy Star, making the project meet the Energy Star program, which includes insulation values, a lot of focus on air sealing. So we'll be doing a blower door test for both the flats buildings and the townhouse buildings, and we'll be meeting the requirements of the stretch energy code, which requires actually a HERS rating. So we'll have a third party HERS modeler, which will take the values of our windows, which we are going to replace the windows. Another reason why we're going to reskin the building, because we're going to be removing those windows. We like to make sure when we reinstall the new windows that we can flash them properly and get them sealed up very well. But the HERS rate will take the values of the systems that we're utilizing in the building, and they'll evaluate the worst case scenario units, and they'll have a score, energy efficiency score for those units, and we'll need to pass that HERS rating in order to achieve the stretch energy code. It's a matter of, we're using high efficiency systems. I don't know as we've gotten specifically into exactly which systems we're using, given that we're just in the permitting phase. But Penrose does have a set of standards and a set of energy efficiency measures that are part of those standards that exist in their program.
The other thing I would add too, one of the things that we've been talking about with the select board is putting in 4 EV charging stations in the space, in some of the parking spaces. So we'll do 4. If I could go back to the vinyl siding comment you made. So one thing what we could do is, if that is the preference of the board, we should put that as a goal of trying to achieve that. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, to find out what it is, the things that you are interested in seeing in this development. And if we can afford a non-vinyl siding, we absolutely would do that. We've done that in other places. It's not all vinyl siding. We've done it hardy plank and brick and other things in other places. It's just a question of what the budget will allow. And if that's a priority of this board, that's something that we'll work hard to figure out how to get into the project and try to move forward to do that, if that's one of your preferences.
And so you mentioned EV charging. Is there plans to have on-site solar panels?
We're going to try to see what we could on the main building, to try to see if we could put some of those on there. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
So at the Eastham site, it appeared that every square inch of that site was clear cut at the beginning of construction. Looking at this site plan, it looks like you've made an effort to show the bounds of clearing, and that there's some
Correct.
pockets that aren't going to be cleared, although there is also a walking trail shown through that area. Could you
Right.
talk a little bit about which portions of the site won't be disturbed, and the maturity and size of plantings that will be established at time of occupancy?
Sure. Mish, do you want to take that one?
Sure. And at this point, we're really trying to, the majority of the work that is being done where the courtyards are and the sort of heavy landscaping is actually all parking lots right now. So it's really, so we're not losing much there. The wooded areas around the outside of the site, we haven't changed. We're not encroaching on there at all, and we're actually adding more evergreen screens on the side next to the parking lot. Adding the trail in that wooded area won't be clearing anything. It would just be a trail that we would intermix into there. So the goal is to really minimize, I mean, we are losing some trees getting those townhouses in, because that is not where parking is right now. So that we are going to be having to clear a little, clear for those areas. The plantings that we're proposing would, it does come down to budget, but our goal is to have this really nicely planted right off the bat, and so hopefully we can get the trees that would be 2.5, 3 inch even caliper trees on some of them, and then decent sized shrubs and throughout the area, and then all of the, like I was saying, the more of the rain gardens, we would do some plugs for planting, so it'll establish a little faster. But in general, those are seeded, and within a season, they're pretty full, and you're already getting wildflowers in there.
So Yes, thank you. The 8 or 11 parking spots out in front of the outermost townhouse sure appear to be pretty dangerous. And I was happy to see that in one of the town reports provided. Is there an opportunity on site to relocate those somewhere else, or do you anticipate needing to amend your waiver as those spots get modified?
Joe, do you want to talk about what you're trying to do with the parking a little bit? Joe Henderson?
Sure, yep. So I think what we'd like to do is maybe eliminate some of the islands to gain some spaces along this entrance drive. And then we could also look at adding some more space. We do have a little bit more room in the back. So we could look at making those up in that area. So those are kind of we have the room in the back to make them up, obviously not encroaching any further to the north, but just adding some spaces to the west.
Great. Well, I hope you sure can keep that boulevard. Like Charlie mentioned, that's a great feature there at the entranceway. The unit count, 10 being workforce, is there any consideration given to having market rate units in this development, and what was the thought process there?
Yeah, that's interesting. We could take a look at that when we built the budget. Well, let me put it this way. What our experience has been is that those are workforce units, but that they're fairly close to market rate, right? And so there's not much of an advantage if you simply call them market rate because you're missing out on some of the opportunities to get some of the workforce housing funding. So that's sort of where we started from, and that's where we came from. We sort of worked backwards. We originally, the thought was, based on what we had read, is that the town wanted this to be 100% affordable, right below 60. And so we said, well, we can still do that, but still add these additional 10. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we came at it from the bottom up, not the top down, right? And how we got to that mix of the workforce plus the affordable. So we pulled them out of the affordable into workforce. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I apologize if you mentioned it earlier. What are the monthly rates for the workforce units approximately?
Rio, do you have that? When you pulled up the incomes, the AMIs, 301? You're on mute.
I don't have it handy, Charlie, but if you give me a
yeah, if you know what, we can pull it up off the AMIs. So if we want to go to other questions, we can circle back and get to that answer before the meeting's over.
So I think it's my last question, which is really about the amenities. You've got a nice site plan here showing various amenities. What are the guarantees that those actually get built out, and also the timing of when those would be put in place, both relative to certificate of occupancy and full occupancy?
Sure. So you're talking about the amenities like the community gardens, the playground?
All of that, right? Which I think really enhance the site and create the visual presentation that we're looking at.
Yeah, we'll build that all into the comp permit. You can make, those could be conditions. A parking, there'd be a community garden, there'd be a playground. We can add those so they get memorialized, so you're confident that they'll get done.
And those would be shown on the approved plans, and your comp permit will be tied to those plans. So if it's not built to the plan, then it's in violation of the comprehensive permit.
And then in terms of the timing, those would all be, those things, the playground and the community garden obviously would be done at the end of construction when everything's, when we've built out the units and, done the final grading on the site and then finish those. But those would be done, just at the end as people are moving in and leasing up, and it wouldn't be a gap between that. Because we need the contractors off the site. We can't have them on there doing stuff while we're leasing up the units. So.
Great. Thank you for those.
Sure.
Any other questions by members of the board? Is there any commentary by, well, first I need to ask you, Mr. Adams, what do you have in mind for moving this hearing forward? What do you need for time?
Yeah, so we were, we were talking a little bit with Andrew. We would, and Andrew could pick this up, but I think we were looking for a continuance to your next meeting, which I believe is February 7th, if that, we could accommodate that. Andrew, do you?
Well, no, actually, we were thinking, Mr. Chairman, a continuance to your February 17th meeting. So not the
Oh.
next meeting, but the meeting after. So 1
Sorry.
month, give or take.
All right.
So that we could address some of the comments, the plans, the architectural review committee, things like that.
Yeah, we want to get to the architectural review committee. I think that's something you guys would like to see. So we want to try to do that
Well,
as well.
that's just not to diminish the work of the architectural review committee, but that's just a polite and cameo appearance, because it's this board that needs to know what that committee thinks, rather than you don't need an approval letter.
I'm sorry, I had a little trouble hearing you.
You don't need
Mr.
an
Chairman.
approval. You don't need an approval from that.
No, we understand that. Right. We need approval from you, not from, right. We understand that.
But having them look at as well will assist towards the comments that Mr. Cole was making, looking at the Orleans design guidelines and trying to make sure that what we give you and come back to you with will be addressing the input you're giving us this evening.
That's the attitude, Mr. Singer. I like it.
That's what I said, doesn't it, Andrew? He just says it better. He's a lawyer. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Right.
What I'm concerned with is whether we should invite public comment now. Is there anyone attending the meeting who wishes to comment on this application the way it has been presented today?
Hey, Michael, this is Sarah. I just want to say, if anybody in the public, please use the raise your hand feature on the on your Zoom app. We do have Robert Wren with his hand raised.
Mr. Wren?
Oh, he just lowered it, so I don't know. That's been up pretty much the whole time, so I don't know if they want to talk.
Okay. I saw a couple of questions in writing, but I'd rather have someone speak publicly rather than submit questions in writing.
Okay, I have Fran McLennan. I'm gonna allow her to talk.
Yes, please.
This is Alan McLennan on Fran McLennan's computer. We're sharing. And I'm speaking to you as chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust Board. And I just want you to know that the trust has been involved in this project since January of 2018. The initial work that was done was started by the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Committee about 6 months earlier. The trust has funded additional work to understand how this site can be developed. And that information was passed to Cape Cod 5 and ultimately passed to Penrose. So what you are seeing here is consistent with close to 2 years of work by the trust and about 2.5 years of work by the committee. We have participated with the Board of Selectmen in their letter that went to the state and supported that. And we have supported the request to the Community Preservation Committee that has been made by Penrose for an additional $2 million. So although you do not have a letter on in the file from us, you will be getting one shortly expressing the fact that the Affordable Housing Trust Board of the Town of Orleans supports this project and supports what you have seen this evening. This is a fascinating case where the Town of Orleans reached out to the Cape Cod 5 several years ago and pointed out that we were interested in seeing them, upon vacating this site, transferring it into affordable housing. And the trust and the committee in the town of Orleans have participated together to make that work. So we are supportive of what is before you. We recognize there are details that have to be dealt with. I think one of the compelling things that I heard this evening was because the window requirements of the units in a commercial office building are different than the window units in an apartment building, the fenestration is going to change. And I understand how the architect is saying to you, we can't show you elevations yet because we haven't quite figured out how to do it yet. So I think that's something that we will see in the future. But I'm familiar with the architectural team and their approach to projects from an earlier career that I had. So I know that they will produce something that is a benefit to the town of Orleans. Thank you very much.
Mr. McLennan. The interest of this board is to
You did that.
accommodate the concerns of the town and its residents, but not to micromanage the project by insertion of a large number of conditions. You just want to be thorough, and that the decision, if we should decide to grant you the permit, is complete and definitive, so that you and the town will know exactly where you stand. So what is the best way, Mr. Singer, to work out a punch list of the information that the board has referred to throughout this hearing, and make sure that we get it on hand on February 17th?
Well, Mr. Chairman, one of the benefits, I guess, of doing these meetings by Zoom is that I'm sitting at a desk. So I have taken very good notes as to everything that I have heard. I think everyone on our team has probably done the same thing. What I would suggest is that I will put together a summary of what I have heard. We will review George Meserve's letter, that he sent to you, and we can put together, and incorporating everything we've heard from the various board members, and we can put that together in what we're going to be putting into our revised submission for you guys for, let's say, the February 17th meeting.
Very well. Very well.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. John.
Would it be out of order to ask if there, just for curiosity, was anybody who was attending this meeting who had hoped to speak in opposition to this?
No, that's quite appropriate. I'd like to smoke that out too. Is there anyone attending this meeting who wishes to speak in opposition to this application by Penrose LLC?
Mr. Chair, this is Sarah again. I had Greg Baker, who had his hand raised still for prior to, I think he had a question that he had put in the question section.
He had two questions, and they tagged with Mr. Cole's questions about electric and siding, I think.
Solar.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
You're welcome.
It's time for bed.
Gotta go.
Yeah, apparently Alexa says it's time for bed. No, Mike, I got a question before, if you don't mind, before you move on to the opposition. I got two hats, town resident plus, my capacity as a fire inspector. At first glance, I really appreciate the accommodations you've made here. Of course, I would have to, go over it with the chief and the deputy chief and see if they have any concerns. I guess my first question would be to how wide is the access path going around the back of the building? I'm not sure what the scale is there. And then another avenue or a question would be I noticed the trees, and the trees are concerned because of overgrowth. We constantly are fighting a battle at the fire department in getting to the people that need our services in the middle of emergency. So how would the grooming or the maintenance of the trees be handled in a place such as this, a complex like this? Would it be condo fees? Would it be the town? How would that be handled?
Sure. Joe, do you want to talk about the width of the road, and then I can talk about the trees?
Yeah, sure. I believe it's a 20-foot wide access path back there.
No, I think it's narrower.
Is it narrow? I was just going to try to double check.
Oh, sorry.
it.
Mish, you looked at that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mish, I
apologize.
think threw that in.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's what we were asked to do at that first meeting, which I think was actually only 14 feet.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Cobb.
The question that's being raised is obviously a quite serious one, and there's no need to rush to the answer this evening, as we know, because we're going to have a continuation hearing in which the applicant has taken very good notes and will address the concerns they've heard raised. And I did hear somebody say it was time to go to bed. So I wondered if we could just air any concerns so that the applicant was fully aware of what they might be without having a lengthy discussion, and then seek to wrap it up for this evening. Thank you for your time.
It's a good idea, Mr. Cobb, but I thought that the response to Mr. Baker's question was really forthcoming, wasn't it, Miss?
I can just answer that question. Like Michelle said, it was requested to be 14 feet wide. So that's what we'll provide.
And this is Andrew Singer again. One of the things we were going to do after this meeting is actually reach back out to the fire department. So we will be continuing that conversation as well.
Good.
Would you like me to answer the tree question, or?
No, we could, you could table that and we could discuss that later.
Okay.
But I do want to ask again, is there anyone attending this meeting who has a burning desire to speak in opposition to the application of Fenway?
I've seen in the comments, Jay Lenga has an opposition, so I'm gonna allow them to talk.
Very well.
All right, Jay Lenga, you are able to talk.
Would you identify yourself for the board, please?
Sure. Sure. This is Jeff Lagana. I am a resident at Somerset Condos, and I also this is my vacation home. We live in Connecticut, and we have seen many affordable housing complexes come.
I think we lost Mr. Lagana.
Yeah, they just dropped out.
Very well.
But I do have all his messages that he has left in both the text chat and the Q&A chat that I can have printed out if you'd like them for the record.
I would like them for the record, yes, but I'm not going to read them in the form that I read them, but I will hold them and consider the
Okay, I will make sure I will save them for the record and email them to you.
That will be fine. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just want to acknowledge that Rio did post the information about the income limits and the rent in the chat if people wanted to take a look at that.
I did see that.
Okay, I think that addressed Mr. Cole's question.
Yes, thank you for posting that.
And Mr. Singer, you're asking for a continuance for 2 weeks. You will reduce that to written form and an email to the board, would you please?
Yes, if we'll ask for a continuance to February 17th now, and I'm happy to put that in writing in an email in the morning to you, or to the board.
Very well. Then I will move that we continue this hearing until February 17th, a regular meeting of the zoning board of appeals. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Very well. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Oh, we need to poll. Myself, yes. Ms. Echo,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Deason,
Yes.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Then we're going to see you again, Mr. Adams, and your group, and Mr. Singer,
Okay.
on February 17th.
Absolutely. Yep. We
Thank you.
appreciate the comments and feedback we got tonight. We will we'll set to work addressing them and come back to you with the definitive answers on those things.
Great. Great.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
do
you.
you have any questions about what I've set forth as the procedure?
I'm pretty comfortable with what you said. I feel like we have a good roadmap from where to get to from here.
Okay.
I
Good.
agree.
Good.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and consideration.
I have no further business to come before the meeting. Is there any new business? Then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Then the meeting is adjourned until February 3rd, our next regular meeting. The agenda to be published